I'm Ryan Betson.
I'm Max Cooper.
And this is our review of Resident Evil Village. Straight off the bat, we will put it out there that Capcom Australia did provide us the review code for Resident Evil Village, so big thank you to them. Max, for those who don't know, Resident Evil Village is the 8th numbered sequel in the Resident Evil franchise, but is in fact a direct sequel to what took place in Resident Evil Biohazard, or Resident Evil 7, the one from a couple years ago. Even so that you are playing the exact same character. You are playing Ethan Winters, and as you've seen from the trailers, you are directed to a village in presumably Scandinavia, European area after you're Ethan, after Chris Redfield comes in and just straight shoots Mia. Spend the whole Resident Evil 7 saving her. Redfield takes her out, and you need to find out why. So that is why you hike over there. Now, there is so much more to this story, but we have been given a very strict list of what we can and cannot discuss, so much so that we are actually quite hesitant on even doing this review, because in our conversations, we're going to go everywhere.
It'll be super vague. There will be no spoilers whatsoever. We will touch very lightly on the story, if at all. It's gonna be a fun and wild one.
It is. It's gonna be an interesting chat. But yeah. So straight off the bat, one thing that we know we can discuss is obviously the game and how we went about it. So you finished it in about 7.5 hours.
About 7.5 to 8 hours.
I did it in 9:03, so just over 9 hours for me. So it's not a massive game. It is quite nice and contained. Now, I did a lot of like piss farting around. I tried to, anytime there was potential collectibles in an area, anything in the area, I did go out of my way to hunt them down. So that did halt my progression of the story.
I did the same thing. From memory, I think it was in Resident Evil 7. I'm pretty sure it was in the 2 remakes of 2 and 3, where once you've cleared an entire area, the background color of the map changes, so you know you've hit everything in the area.
Don't need to keep searching, keep moving.
So there was a lot of times where I was constantly hitting that map button going, have I got everything? But can I move on now?
Yeah.
So I did spend a fair bit of time trying to get, obviously, it's a Resident Evil game. Ammo's short. You want to make sure you get every single possible thing you possibly can, because there's crafting. You want to make sure you've got everything at your disposal because you will use everything.
Yeah.
So
let's touch upon the story itself to the best that we can.
So can we say what the from 7 to 8 what the gap is?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so there's a 3-year gap between the end of Resident Evil 7 to the start of Resident Evil 8 Village.
Yeah, so there is an actual amount of time, very similar to the amount of time since between the games. So that's kind of fun that they're keeping a relatively real timeline. And so it's not like it just happened straight after that.
Yeah.
They've attempted to, separate themselves from the Louisiana incident, and that's what brings it into here. Now, we can't go too hard further into that, but what we can say is they do tie together. As I said before, it is a direct sequel, and as a result, things that take place in 7 get involved into 8. And I love that.
Yeah, it's nice to have a straight continuation.
Well, because adding to what they did in 2 and 3 remake, they are tying them all together. And back in the day, there were strands between them, but there is direct narrative connection between at least 2 and 3 remake, and then there are things that tie into what would become 4. Presuming there's a 4 remake in the works, and then some minor things that lead to 7, and then 7 and 8 are so beautifully connected. They are cutting a lot of the fat off the Resident Evil lore timeline and bringing it together to try to have some sort of consistent narrative between it, which is great. So in terms of the story itself, as I said, you're in a village in the Scandinavian, what feels like Transylvania, like that kind of region, Eastern Europe. There's not much more we can go into that, but you've met in the trailers, you've met quite a number of the villains. There is a group, and as a result, there are, very similar to 7, where 7 had, different regions of the swamp. You had the house and the side house, and then the brother, and then there's all these different things. The same format it comes across here. So you are you do head in different locations. Not saying what they are, but they are different locations that you travel in and out around in order to achieve your objective.
Yeah.
And then it all comes together in the end, just like 7. So without obviously going into too many specific, how do you feel about the story? Because that's what drives me to this game personally.
Yeah, so the story, I felt, did a really good job of continuing the story of the characters that we met in Resident Evil 7. Did a fantastic job of fleshing out a little bit more of their story. It was compelling. It pushed me through. Like, obviously, I was playing this game every single night up until I finished it. I couldn't put it down. I was constantly like, when can I get back in here? Got to get more. I found that the game was more linear than what past Resident Evil games were like. There was less of that backtracking to find. Like, there was still that. Like, it was still, get X key over here that will open X door over there. There's still that, but I found that it was less of it.
Yeah.
It wasn't as... Because, like, you look back at Resident Evil 2, for instance.
Yes.
You're constantly going back and forth and back and forth. That wasn't that bad. It was a little bit more linear, which I think helped push the story a little bit easier. It gave you more of a focus, so you didn't get... Like, obviously not getting sidetracked, probably the wrong term to use, but it gave you... It focused you a bit more.
Yeah.
So I guess I attribute that to my shorter playtime, because obviously 7.5 hours to 8 hours to finish this. Now, granted, I didn't collect all the possible collectibles and all that stuff, but it did drive you in a certain way, which I think I found good.
Yeah.
I found that it worked well with the story that they're telling in this game. Without, spoiling the story.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense to be driven.
Yeah. So I would agree with that. I do like the story. I do like the story that they were telling. It does feel like the second part of a trilogy, which goes in line with what there was a report that came out about 2 weeks ago saying that 8 is the second part of a trilogy, which that's what it feels like. This story in this, it is what's moving it forward, but it doesn't have a finite sort of closed ending, like done. That's the end of that chapter. That's not giving away stories, but it's just saying that it has that sense of middle.
Yeah.
Like when you watch Lord of the Rings, you watch Two Towers, it has that sense of middle. And that's what I got from this as well. Not saying that it's, because most middles in a trilogy tend to be a bit meh. Like, no, this is still very, very good.
Oh, yeah.
I really enjoyed the array of antagonists in the game that you experience. Once again, if you played the village demo or the castle demo, you would have seen hints of them. But you most prominently, you guys would know Lady Dimitrescu, who, big tall woman that everyone's got like real hard-ons for. So it was cool to see the differences in them and how they would all tie together. Now, one of them did feel not as connected to me. It felt a little off, but the rest kind of all worked. Does that make sense?
It's hard to know without knowing which one you're talking about.
Third.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah, so like it didn't quite connect. I liked what they were going for, but it didn't land in the same way that the other antagonist really sort of shared a similar feel. Like, I know I'm getting all Marbo about it, but like there was a feel that was connecting these villains, and this one just felt so off and tonally different. But other than that, like it's good. Like I agree with you completely. It does feel way more linear than I was anticipating. I guess I'm probably, because off the back of 2 and 3, I'm like, yes, give me that. It's a punch microphone. Give me that Metroidvania-esque coming and going and finding doors. Finding doors that I can't get to now, but I know I'm coming to them later. Like, nothing to me beats the excitement of in Resident Evil 2 Remake, knowing that I'm seeing, when I first pick up the Clover Key and then I see a diamond door and I see a, spade door, I'm like, oh man, there's like a string of 4 different doors here that I can, and like there's multiple doors with all different things, where here you do get that there is a like a key that you build upon in the same way that has, 4 or 5 variants. However, it is all in that same story progression. You just get it as you're going. So you never go, oh, well, an example in 7, like 7, you have the Scorpion Key, right? And you see like 3 or 4 Scorpion doors. You're like, dope. I know I can't get to it now, but when I get there, these doors are going to open. It's going to be exciting. Where here it's like, all right, I'm in one hallway and there's 4 different doors, and it's kind of like, all right, at some point I'm going to come back to this main area and then go down that door and then come back and then go down that door. Like, it took away like that real backtracking, because even early on I mentioned to you and I was like, I feel this is going in one direction. Like, and from a story perspective, that's great. That's brilliant. And that's what they're going for here. But I guess that is a my expectation thing.
I'm gonna ask you something here that I don't think we might need to cut. But could you say, because one of the themes in Resident Evil 7 was family?
Yes.
Because obviously it was you and Mia, or you were trying to find Mia, your family,
and you against the Baker family.
You were against the Baker family. I would argue that 8 is similar. That is the family theme.
Very true. Like, that is becoming to be the ongoing thread through what would be this trilogy, I believe. Yeah. And I think that's cool. Vague enough, no, that's 100% vague enough. Like, it's just that sense of family, right? Yeah. Because family can be anything. It can be Fast and the Furious kind of family, which is a collective people that come together and have a shared bond, and that's family. Or they could be, a sibling family, maternal family, paternal family.
Yeah.
So I would agree with that. And
so it's nice to see that they have a similar theme from their previous title. Again, being a direct sequel, it's nice to see that continuation between the two of them.
Very much so. I do quite like that a lot. And if you obviously you are going to be of benefit by playing 7 before coming into this. I'm so glad that I finished it up. I replayed it last year. Finished it up again, knowing that I was coming into Village this year, because that really helped. It's really sort of, you get that complete sense.
It is highly recommended to finish 7 before playing it.
As it is Resident Evil, it is a survival. It's at its core, Resident Evil should be a survival horror game. Did you get that sense of horror, that sense of suspense, of fear?
I definitely got that feeling of suspense. I wouldn't go with fear though. So there wasn't the atmosphere that they build in this game. I think works to its advantage really, really well. Now there are times in some of the areas where I was literally shivering because of the atmosphere and what was inside there. The sound, the sound design being used, the enemies in the location literally had me like, oh, you know how you get that shiver when you kind of creep out.
Something's uneasy,
It's that feeling of unease. I wouldn't. It's hard to. Yeah, I wouldn't say fear. I wouldn't say fear, but there's definitely that atmosphere of dread, perhaps. That, what's lurking around the next corner. Because you always, playing a Resident Evil game, you do expect things to be ready to jump out at you at any given moment. And I think the way that they used their sound design and the atmosphere in their different locations really worked to its advantage. Yeah, it really upped it to the next level.
See, I see where you're coming from. I can't disagree with you, really.
Really?
So there were things that gave me suspense, which was cool. But I never felt dread. I never felt complete shock or fear.
Yeah.
Because an example would be in Resident Evil 2 Resident Evil 2 Remake, you have Mr. X, the tyrant, who's constantly searching for you, and you just hear footsteps, and it's doo, 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 and it's like, it's intense. Even if he's nowhere near you, you can hear him. So there's this constant sense of foreboding, right? Where with if you played the castle demo, you see a little bit that Lady Dimitrescu does a little bit of that tyrant-y chasing. However, because you're not backtracking as much as you were in 2, I ran into her twice maybe, and I just dodged her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that, like, that same, like, if they're trying to instill that same fear response, I wasn't getting it.
Yeah.
And even then, like some of the enemies and stuff I ended up fighting on later, which, you know, an example being the Lycany werewolves dudes that you guys can see in the trailers and the demos as well, is that they just became annoying after a little while.
Well, the other thing is, like, comparing Resident Evil Village to Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 2 is very... You're indoors a lot of the times, and they're very tight corridors.
And I loved it. That sense of claustrophobia.
Whereas in 8, I found that the spaces were a lot more open, and it's like, you're in my way, but I can kind of just walk around you.
Yeah.
Whereas in 2, you didn't really have that luxury. If something was in front of you, you kind of had to deal with it or turn around and go the other way.
Yeah.
There was never this, I'll just casually step around you and we'll continue on our merry way.
Yeah, so that, like, I would make I know that one of the biggest contentions when it comes to Resident Evil franchise is that shift from 4, where it became a more action series rather than a survival horror suspense series, right? And I do see that Village has some of that because it is directly influenced from 4, in terms of its setting, certainly, and a lot of that comes through because I felt myself, I wasn't all that conservative with ammo, really. You know, because of the nature of the Lycans running at you, I was like, all right,
yeah.
And I was playing on standard difficulty. What you play?
I played on standard as well.
Yeah, and like obtaining items was never really much of an issue. I was always able to find enough, or I just made some more bullets or whatever.
Yeah, because obviously with the crafting system, you can craft.
Yeah, which we'll get into those nitty gritty mechanics shortly. But like, I never had that constant sense of I need to make every shot count.
Yeah.
No, don't get me wrong, I didn't just start firing aimlessly into a room, but like I still was able to, you know, knowing that, like, all right, well, this is essentially a horde room, and I'm gonna have to like fight my way through these guys. So I never had that sense of fear. There was some uneasy body horror that creeps in. I think that's kind of why it made you a bit uncomfortable. Similar thing, I was very uncomfortable to deal with. But in the same sense, I was like, I just walked around it.
Yeah. I mean,
I think my kid may have seen it because he's screaming from the back.
Yeah, it's interesting in that specific situation. It is kind
without
of just
obviously mentioning it directly.
Without mentioning it directly, it was kind of I'm just gonna. There's something I can just hide behind here and just casually walk that way while you come this way.
Yeah.
So, you know, there was never like a feeling of being trapped, or it's definitely going to catch you, like with the Tyrant, going back to that, where he just kicks the door in, grabs you, and you're wrecked. There was always an easy, like, I wouldn't say easy, there was always a way out that wasn't too obscure or hidden. Yeah.
Not saying it's been dumbed down or anything. Yeah, it's just the nature of how they've designed it, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just and like it's not inherently a bad thing. Because I still enjoyed it. I just never I say that I did jump twice.
Yeah,
like there were but it was mostly just things falling off it. You know, turn across like, and if you there is also going to be the first half an hour gameplay video that goes up the same time as this, and you'll see me literally jump in that opening gameplay.
The amount of times that I use the amount of times I use because they've kept you push down and hit circle and you do the quick 180. Yeah. There were so many times where I'm like, what was that? And quickly do a 180 just in case there was something behind me. I'm like, it's nothing. I just turn around.
Well, let's jump into the more technical side of things, because obviously you're hearing things, you're hearing sounds because you played with headphones on. And you. So
I played. I played on the pretty mode, so 4K 45 FPS.
Ray tracing, same
with the ray tracing. I played in a pitch black room, lights off, headphones on. Because I found my spoiler, my monitor's not fantastic, so having the HDR on and the ray tracing on, if I had the light on in the room, it kind of skews the colors a bit, so I just turned everything off. Yeah, and just ran it like that. Worked fine. So I got myself, prepared in the zone. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So obviously it looks great. I had no big frame rate drop, so I felt no need to turn the ray tracing off to bump it up to that 60 frames. I found that with the ray tracing on, it was still perfectly fine. I ran really well. I didn't experience any to go full technical. I had no crashes.
No, I had not one crash.
And we obviously played pre-day one patch, so we had no issue. I had no issues whatsoever. Graphically, it looks stunning. Getting to look across all the vistas. Each location has its own atmosphere. Like I said before, their own color palettes. They're all uniquely designed. They all have their own feel, and I think they did really well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, it is one of those things that, each area does have its own distinct look and color palette. To add to that, like, in terms of the game performance, I also had no major concerns. I did get quite a lot of pop in later on. Because as you start sprinting through an area, it's like
if there were too many enemies that you were running past, I did find there was a little bit of a texture pop.
Just like shrubs and things popping back in, but nothing too massively game breaking.
We should also say that we both played this on PS5 as a PS5 version.
Yes, very true.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of pop in here and there, but that's nothing to complain about. The one thing I did go, I'm like, this game's real fucking dark. I'm like, yeah, dynamic range, you dickhead. Like, that's why. Because the light area is really well lit. Hence, the light. And because, the guys, as you said, we're seeing it in the castle demo, you're in a castle. A castle is dank, it's dirty, it's poorly lit by design. That's what castles don't have electricity in the same way. Yeah. Right? And it certainly gave that feel. And, and then when you sort of go into these different areas, like when you're in the woods, it's dark and like the light is obscured by the trees. So everything's kind of like hazy almost. Like there's a lot of that softened light rather than direct light. And in terms of the ray tracing, like, things that were meant to look wet looked wet. And like they shined.
Had a particular shine to them.
They had a particular shine to them that made it like, that's where that ray tracing sort of kicked in gear. I really enjoyed in performance. It was fantastic. So I played with headphones on most of the time as well, but I was just using my Audio Technicas plugged into the controller. And then I also used the 3D pulses as well. They are sort of still not very good headphones. So like there was some good use of 3D or spatial audio. Nothing too major. Because I kind of admit that everything sort of came at me face on. So I guess it's the first person perspective. Things tend to come at you face on. So I didn't really have to worry too much about things that were behind me. In terms of technology support, being on the PS5, it did have adaptive trigger support. So as your weapon became more powerful, as you upgraded it, it would be like the shotgun would be harder to pull on the left, because it's kind of like a bit more chunked, a bit more weight to it, and it did have like that chunk sort of as you fired the weapon. But I found that it wasn't consistent. So if you hammered the pistol, it would just do it the once, and the rest were kind of pretty easy. Having not shot a real gun, I don't know whether you have to, like, you literally are pumping that hurdle every time. But in terms of haptic feedback, especially after playing Returnal, I don't think it has the same scope of feedback. It's just standard Rumble.
I mean, I would argue that it's slightly better than standard Rumble, but it's just a Rumble. It's not. Yeah. It's not like you're getting hit from the left, so only the left side of your DualSense is rumbling. Yeah, it's just the whole thing goes.
Yeah,
which is fine. I mean,
it's
a third party title.
Spot on.
It is what it is.
It's a third-party title, with some sort of agreement with PlayStation to at least do trigger support, and obviously not so much that they didn't invest in getting a VR version of the game, because I think this would look fantastic in VR. Don't get me wrong. I hope they bring it, like, whether they patch it later or not. But obviously the data's there, and they didn't put this in VR.
Wonder if that's because Resident Evil 7 didn't do well in VR.
That's what I'm saying. People may have played, but they would have at least the data to show that people played it in VR and not in VR. And obviously, there was such a low percentage of those that played it in VR. Yeah. The investment wouldn't have
too many
paid
people
off.
crap their pants.
Yeah, because it's fucking horror. Everyone's like, "Oh, I want scary VR experiences." Here you go. Not that one.
It's too scary.
Yeah,
I changed my mind.
And that's what it felt like as well. But in terms of new systems as well within the game itself, the Duke is back. You have a shop again. Which something you didn't have in 7 from memory. No,
there's no shop.
No shop. So you had like the cages that you could find in the caravan or whatever. But yeah, so the Duke is back. I say he's back because he's very similar to the shopkeeper. And what are you buying? You didn't say that though. I was so bummed. I hope we'd said it once for like nostalgia's sake. So yeah, enemies drop shit you can sell, as well as LEI, which is the currency. So you're going there and upgrading and whatever, which is fun. Yeah, so...
The Resident Evil 4 attach case is back.
Yep, big honking briefcase.
So you've got, you can play your Tetris minigame in it to stack all your stuff how you want it to fit.
Now, with that in mind, I found that I did not have to Tetris this at all. Not once.
Okay,
why? Because what they've done is they've made some changes here. Because there is a inventory system in 7 as well. Mm-hmm. So it's very similar. However, they have separated your supplies. So your herbs, your gunpowder, your fluids, they don't appear in your case.
Correct.
So previously you would have your herbs in there. Because I having just played, I replayed Resident Evil 4 at the back end of last year as well. I went for 7 and 4. I went to both. Where, if you pick up your herbs, they land individually in your box. Yeah. And if you were to pick up gunpowder, it's in your box. Like it's all it just started raining. It's all separate in the box. So that Tetris management is way harder here. Where here it's like, okay, I didn't even think about it. So much so that I was just when I would find new weapons, I wouldn't even look to in there and to reshuffle them. I'm like, all right, whatever.
I fully upgraded my attach case. I ran out of space.
Really? Why? How is yours? How do we have such an experience?
I had like so many weapons.
I had all of them.
So many weapons.
Oh, actually, no. There was a couple of the end games ones I didn't buy.
Yeah, I had so many. I ended up I had like 3 pistols, multiple shotguns. I had like some super duper stuff, and it took up room.
Okay, well, yeah.
And then your ammo has a cap too. So I had like
stacks of 30, similar to...
I had like stacks of ammo down one side, and I had your first aid sprays are still they're still things.
Not spray, it's more of a tonic.
Yeah, now. But keys are now listed under key items,
which they have been previously as well.
Separate thing. They're not in your case anymore. But I found that I ran out of room.
Interesting. I had the exact opposite. I never had to think about it.
Were you crafting a lot of the usables?
Yeah, only when I needed to though.
No, see, no, I had everything on stock.
Well, because it was so. Say if I approached an enemy and I'm like, "Oh, you're going to benefit from pipe bombs." Pause. Make pipe bombs. Yeah.
Now, see, I always assumed that I would need them, so I just kept them on hand. I had pipe bombs and everything.
Okay.
All kinds of stuff, and I just had everything set up, ready to go.
Nice. All right, beautiful.
I guess it's just a different way.
Yeah, it's just as I was expecting you to be like, yeah, I didn't use the touch. I barely didn't worry about it. I'm like, oh.
I put Tetris that lad hard. One of the guns alone almost takes up the entire row.
Yeah, I think one of the rifles is super long.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's interesting. I'm glad we had a different experience there. But
and then each of the attachments for the weapons, because you can get gun attachments, they take up a spot until you've equipped them.
Yes, but so having come back to 4, so if you had say the SMG or the little machine gun, right, the little one, you put the hip attachment on, it changed the shape of the gun in the attach case. Not the case here.
Not the case here.
Pun intended.
It's great.
Yeah, so that was really handy. So in terms of that Tetris management, there were some minor, what is it called? What's the word I'm looking for? Quality of life sort of changes there, which were fine, absolutely fine. Is there anything that we haven't touched upon yet? Story, gameplay. I haven't even touched on gameplay. It's first person again.
Yeah, the gunplay is quite nice still.
Yeah. If you played 7, it plays exactly the same.
Yeah. Cool. I'd argue a little bit better, but it's for argument's sake, it's pretty much the same.
Visual and performance we touched upon. Looks great. Play, it ran fine. It ran fine for us. No issue at all. Mm-hmm. The new thing. Oh, they had the guard. Did you guard often?
I guarded all the time. So one of the other things the Duke does, apart from allowing you to buy and sell stuff, apparently the Duke is quite the chef. So in this game, on your map, you'll see little icons of animals, and you can hunt those animals. And then the Duke does stuff with them that does all kind of stuff. So
he doesn't kind of tell you what he does, but it's not very nice.
Yeah.
Right? So he essentially will make buffs for you. He'll make permanent buffs. So if you give him the right amount of food, he'll be like, all right, beautiful, here you go. You eat this soup and you now, your block is better. Your health is
that's the first one I got.
Yeah.
You take less damage when you're blocking, so I blocked everything.
Ah, really?
Because the other thing the block allows you to do is when you block, you can
push
them back. You can push them away.
Probably why I got munched on by so many lichens. I hardly ever.
So you put your hand up or your gun up or whatever it is that you got in your hand at the time. You block the damage. You take significantly less damage, and then you can kick them or push them or punch them away. It gives you that space to work with of whether or not you want to turn around and run, whether you want to just stand there and fight. You've got a little bit of room so you can kind of aim that shot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I use the block all the time. I think it was a great addition.
Cool. I never used it. I hardly touched it. Hardly touched it at all. And then a couple times I did use it. I went, oh yeah, and then I just forgot. And I think that's just my play. I think I just play differently to you, which is probably a big part of it. But yeah, overall, what are you? Because I think we've hit every beat that we can think of.
Yeah, I mean, like,
what are your overall thoughts?
I was just gonna say, just to add, it's still got all those same things from 7. You'll still see, there's still those puzzles. There's still those, significant encounters.
Yeah,
we just can't touch upon them, which is fine.
Yeah,
you should go in blind anyway. It'll make your experience a lot better.
So what are your overall thoughts?
Overall thoughts, this is a fantastic addition to the series, a really great continuation to the story. Absolutely fantastic. It's a must play for anyone who played Resident Evil 7.
Yeah, I completely agree. My word is fucking awesome. But see, I also knew that going in though. I did have a sense that I was going to enjoy it because as of right now, like Capcom have released success on success. Like not every game may be the bestest, but they have certainly been fucking good and at least great. And that certainly has continued on here as well, with this being a certainly great title. So yeah, with that, as we said, it looks good, plays great, takes advantages of some PS5 features. It may not have the same suspense horror that you might be expecting, especially if you've just come off the remake. But knowing that it's a direct sequel from 7, if you played 7, if you enjoyed 7, if you like what 7 gave you, then you are going to enjoy this just as much.
Yeah.
We certainly recommend it. Go pick it up if you can. If anyone wants to sell me the trophy, the statue, the Chris Redfield statue that comes in the collectors, because I never got it, I'll buy that statue off you. Just let me know. I want it because I want to put it on here. This shelf has space for more statues, and I'll 100% put it on there. But yeah, either way, game is great. The game comes out this Friday, May the 7th, across all platforms. As you said, big thank you to Capcom Australia for providing us the review code for this. We do really, truly appreciate the support and being able to get in the first wave of conversation when it comes to Resident Evil Village. But if you do have any questions, let us know in the comment below. We'll endeavor to answer them the best way we can, depending on when you ask the question. If it's post-launch, I'll answer fucking anything. If it's pre-launch, I'll be a bit more stiff about it. However, one thing we do plan on doing at a later date is coming back and doing a full spoiler discussion, and that'll be maybe part of our regular show, and we'll just tack it on at the end, and we'll go absolute ham. And that'll be a ton of fun. So we hope to fill in our thoughts on things we couldn't discuss here.
Yeah.
However, if you do want to hear more about us and you've just stumbled across this video, Max and I do a weekly PlayStation podcast called For the Players. The Pop Culturist PlayStation podcast comes at you every Monday morning on YouTube and on your podcast services. Those videos are on this channel, are on the podcast services. If you found, as you probably already know, but if you are on YouTube, they are available in probably recommended or on the channel. Check them out if you are so interested, if you like what we have to say. However, until we come back for that show or another review, I'm Ryan Betson.
I'm Max Cooper.
And that was Resident Evil Village.